Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Permanent values, part 8a. So I've called this first part as A. Knowledge, a permanent value. And these are the references. And this is our contact. First slide is some general points in relation to permanent values. The issue facing those who think and question the purpose of their own creation and the universe around them is where to find a logical answer to this, which satisfies their rational mind. Because we all question at some point in time, particularly if we are in trouble and suffering in a man-made system, we do question and say, what is the purpose of my existence? It should tell them clearly based on evidence that the path suggested by this guidance will lead them to that conclusion towards which it points. So Quran, as we know, makes it very clear to us as we go through it and study it, that the aim of life comes very clearly before us. The Quran claims to be the book containing that knowledge which human beings cannot acquire on their own. And we will see that as we go through today's presentation, that a number of things which are noted and will be discussed, human mind simply cannot find it out at its own. We are then faced with the challenge to be able to differentiate between knowledge which is acquired through the man-made systems and the knowledge given in the Quran. Does the knowledge given in the Quran answer those questions which man cannot figure out on his own using his potentials of intellect and reasoning? Does the knowledge given in the Quran answer those questions which man cannot figure out on his own using his potentials of intellect and reasoning? And this thing will become quite clear as we go through today's presentation, that the things which are covered in the Quran, simply human mind at its own cannot figure it out. Can this knowledge help man to establish a system free from the problems created by the unguided human psyche, which is dominated by his emotive biases? There's nothing wrong with emotions, but emotions have to be utilized in the support of intellect to get things done. And if the answer is yes, then how should he proceed to study the Quran? For this aim, Tolu Islam offers its platform to any seeker of the system of Deen, as it has the relevant material containing information and knowledge about the fundamentals of Deen. These are the permanent values which we covered in part 1 and 2. And if we want to look at any of the value, we can freeze the screen and go through it. And these are the next set of values which were covered in part 3, 4, and 5. And these are the permanent values which were covered in parts 6 and 7 and 8a, which is the presentation of today. The state of a people can only change when their psyche changes. No yatim and miskeen in the world. Only those receive guidance who seek it, and knowledge, and part 1 we will cover today. The first slide, knowledge, and in Arabic it is ilm, and we'll go through the root meaning very briefly. There is a lot more to it, but I have covered only the salient points which relate to our presentation of today. To know something in its reality, to recognize, to comprehend reality, acquire conviction, to feel, to establish with certainty. And reality means that appearance is the same as the underlying fact is. So there is no contradiction between the two. And we can see that, for example, in the media, some of the things which they project, they are not reality. Facts are something else. And what they do is they impose their own opinions over it. So reality is which is real, which is truth. The one who perceives reality like this is called a scholar, and Quran calls it alim. The plural of alim is ulama, and those who possess profound and sure knowledge. The basic meaning of this root is those symbols due to which that thing becomes differentiated from other things. And that is important. For example, if there are two books lying in front of us and their names are different, then that will become knowledge only if we know what is included in those books. By merely looking at the information of those books will be information. The Quran has called hearing, seeing, and the heart and intellect as the means for the acquisition of knowledge. These are our senses. We use them on a daily basis. For example, all of us are listening to this presentation using our senses of hearing, seeing, and of course, heart is whatever is being said, we analyze it. Both perceptual and conceptual knowledge are encompassed in this. From the aspect of the heart, which is called fuad, feelings also become included. Since knowledge can only be called knowledge when it reaches the level of conviction, the Quran has declared Wahi to be knowledge. Wahi is that knowledge which cannot be obtained using human intellect and reasoning. And that is another very important point. We should keep that in mind, that Wahi is that knowledge which cannot be obtained by the use of human intellect and reasoning. It is provided to us in a complete form. Whereas human knowledge is progressive. We evolve, we gradually learn about things. It used to be revealed directly by Allah to Anbiya. Hence, what is in the Quran is not the product of human intellect, and which also means that the Quran is the complete book and preserved. Hence, no more Nabi, no more messenger is coming from the direction of Allah. Human beings themselves have to take care of their own guidance and make an effort to learn from the Quran and establish the system. Conviction, which is Iman, develops through knowledge. And Iman is not belief or faith. We should keep that in mind. It is conviction based on evidence, and we acquire Iman over a period of time. It is not just saying that I have Iman and then we think that we have got Iman, because this Iman brings a change within our own conduct, within our own psyche. And this is why the Quran repeatedly emphasizes the acquisition of knowledge about the outer world as well as the human psyche. We have gone through this aspect in a number of presentations. This leads to coming to grips with the reality of human creation and its higher purpose for which the universe is created. Now, next is some reflections on Alameen words. What I've done over here in this slide is I've taken some excerpts from the meanings of the Quran, volume 1. The root for this is which means to know and recognize. Therefore, alim, as in lim, is a possessor of knowledge or someone who knows about some matter. And alam is that thing through which someone can recognize something, i.e. a sign or symbol of something. For example, alam is a flag. For example, the flag of some country is the symbol, and it is also a symbol of an army. You are passing through a desolate jungle at night where there is no sign of any human life, and you glimpse a flickering light in the distance. From this, you will recognize that a human being lives there. That lamp will become the sign or alam of the presence of some human being. So from some sign to draw a conclusion will also become, that sign will become alam. So from that alam, then of course we are getting the knowledge. Alameen is plural of alam. And remember, that is alim and alam. So there is a slight difference in the phonetics, the sound of it. Therefore, its meaning is universes. We consider this word of ours as being the universe, but who knows how many universes there are created by Allah. And then the meaning of this word will become even more clear when we bring this fact noted in the Quran before us. And this is an interesting verse because people are still the scientists still talk about whether the universe is expanding or not. And now the conclusion is that universe is definitely expanding. And the Quran has made it clear right at the beginning, he adds to his creation as he wills. Because Allah is a creator and this universe of his is dynamic. So it is expanding and ever more universes are being added to it. Allah keeps on adding to his creation according to his program of Mashiach. So over here, program of Mashiach means that Allah follows his own laws. That is, everything follows certain laws. And we have differentiated between the domain of Amr and domain of Khalq. In the domain of Khalq, all those laws which are created by Allah are visible to us. But in the domain of Amr, those laws are created, but we cannot find out why did he create a certain law the way it is. For example, why water is wet or why fire provides heat. This is the way it is. but in the domain of khalq, we can understand the functioning of these laws. How many new universes keep on coming into existence every new day? Keep these awesome expanses of these creations of Allah in mind, and then reflect on this fact that He has called Himself Rabbul Alameen, i.e. responsible for the nourishment, that is Rububiyyat, of all the universes. So Allah is taking His universe from a starting point to its destination, and everything within these universes have a purpose. So that is the way we should look at our own creation, that we have a purpose, and then we should look at the Quran and find out what that purpose is. This is taken from the meanings of the Quran, volume 1. Now, next slide is knowledge is the means to gaining power. In fact, once we know about something, we already feel a bit higher than our previous stage because our knowledge increases, and knowledge gives us confidence. The Quran has repeatedly invited us to gain knowledge, which is of two types. One is that knowledge which we gain through our own efforts, for which man-made systems have established institutions, and we experience it. All of us who are educated, we know how to seek this knowledge and how to make an effort to even know more. And we can also gain knowledge even without going to institutions at our own. This is important for cognitive development in order to succeed in the physical life, i.e. obtain those benefits for which we need this knowledge. For example, we need a particular kind of knowledge to get a job in a particular organization. Even to run a business, we need knowledge of running that business. So we observe this, and this is all evidence-based. The second kind of knowledge is that which is communicated through Wahi, the Quran, for the guidance of man to succeed in this life, as well as to acquire that developed self which is needed for the life of the hereafter. And this is where our difficulty comes in, because people who are satisfied with this kind of a knowledge, that is the man-made knowledge, they don't feel a need to go for the Quran. And particularly those who are beneficiaries of the system. They think our life is self-sufficient and we don't need anything. And the religious belief system provides them some kind of a false satisfaction or self-deception about the life of the hereafter, and they ignore the law of requital. So this is something very important for us as students of the Quran to understand, that why Wahi is important and which knowledge is associated with Wahi, and how that Wahi helps us to understand the man-made system and its knowledge as well. So it is a dual advantage over here, because under this knowledge of man-made system, we only know about the man-made system. But under the knowledge of Wahi, we know how the man-made system is and what are its faults, what are its problems, what are its limitations. And we also know the higher purpose of life and how to manage human affairs more effectively. Regarding this, it has even taught us a supplication, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. And this is a very interesting supplication, because if we look at it, it starts from Rabb, which is related to Rububiyyat. So that means Quran is asking us that you should supplicate, you should make an effort to increase your knowledge, to acquire that knowledge which is related to Rububiyyat. Because there is no point in teaching us supplication to gain knowledge of the man-made system, because we can figure it out at our own, through our own intellectual reasoning. And say, oh my Rabb, grant me knowledge. Just note that implicit in it is the Rububiyyat aspect of this knowledge. In another place, we are reminded, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يُجَادِلُ فِي اللَّهِ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ وَلَا هُدًى وَلَا كِتَابٍ مُنِيرٍ. Yet there is among men such a one as disputes about Allah without knowledge, without guidance, and without a book of enlightenment. And we see that particularly on the stage of religion, where people argue about these things without reading the Quran. And we do come across those people who are adamant on this, that I believe in Allah's book, without reading it. And this kind of an attitude is terrible. But as students of the Quran, we should know the psyche of such people. Why do they do it? Because it is their own inner egoism or their own inner arrogance. They don't feel that there is a need for the knowledge of the Quran, because there is nothing missing in them. They think that the life will end with death, and we are having a good time under the man-made system. So why should we change the status quo? Guidance and knowledge are presented as a powerful combination in the light of the Quran for man to succeed here as well as in the hereafter. And we will see that under the man-made knowledge or man-made systems, there is no concept of the hereafter. Hereafter only appears when we go through the Quran and the details which are provided by the knowledge of Wahi. And we will look at hereafter as well in our hopefully either part 2 or part 3 of our talk on knowledge. Next slide is knowledge. This includes the law of requital. Since man makes choices and decisions in life which have consequences, hence he is provided with the attributes of intellect and reasoning so that he can analyze the outcome of every decision he makes. The law of requital guides man in this respect at an individual level as well as at a collective level. Law of requital functions is operating 24/7 in the human world, whether we like it or do not like it, whether we know about it or do not know about it. In the Western world, everyone knows every cause has an effect, and they also talk about unintended consequences. So they think that if we don't intend certain consequences, these should not take place, and when these occur, they call it unintended consequences. Whereas students of the Quran, we know there is nothing unintended. Every intention we have will have a consequence if it is turned into an action or a deed. Even our thoughts have an impact on our personality. So nothing goes unescaped from the law of requital of Allah. The Quran has guided us in this respect from the beginning to the end. For example, when it states that the purpose of the guidance is to help mu'mineen become muttaqeen, it means we should gain knowledge in order to become fully aware of the pitfalls of life and to be able to avoid these in order to live a prosperous and successful life. All decision making should be based on adequate information and knowledge. That is a very important point again, that Quran says, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Pursue not that of which you have no knowledge, for hearing, seeing, and cognition will be questioned. It includes both aspects, i.e., do not pursue that for which we do not possess knowledge. Very important. If we want to pursue something, we must gain knowledge. And if we wish to pursue something, then it must be based on knowledge to get the best. And it also means that in order to utilize our senses, that is of hearing, seeing, and of our intellect, we have to use it to gain knowledge, because that is the way these develop. And this is highlighted by what it says, Quran over here, anhu mas'ula, that you will be questioned about it, which means that our self will not develop. And we will fail to get those advantages, bring out those potentials which are related to gaining knowledge. So our whole efforts in life should be to gain as much knowledge as possible, both of man-made system as well as of the system of Deen. It also means that in the absence of knowledge, we will fail to get the best out of our intellectual potentials. And we will see that some of the aspects which are covered through these presentations, we will be learning more about the Quran, that some of the aspects which were not previously clearly visible to us will become visible. And hopefully through question and answer, we'll be able to look at those aspects which haven't been covered in our previous presentations. Hence, we will not obtain those benefits associated with the acquisition of knowledge, for example, sciences, self-development. And nowadays, of course, we are in a great advantage because people have written so many books, serious books, not these fictional, useless books, which is probably a waste of time, but all those books which are about the serious aspects of life, and there is a lot done. A lot of people have written books on these aspects under the man-made system. Libraries are full of it, and nowadays, of course, through internet, we can download a lot of PDFs as well without spending a penny. Next slide is knowledge. It becomes a relative value under man-made systems. And that is an interesting aspect on which I didn't think of it like that permanent value can also become a relative value. the way we look at it and the way we utilize it. We all know the benefits of acquiring knowledge through the man-made systems, and this is why we wish to provide education and training to our children. So this is an important aspect we should share with our children, that how knowledge becomes a relative value and how it becomes a permanent value. However, since it is a relative value under these systems, hence it is not made available to everyone, then its standards vary from country to country. And why? Because once we look at knowledge as a permanent value, then wherever there will be system of deen, everyone will look at it at a fundamental level in the same way. And over here, we can see it as a relative value. It is not extended to everyone. So that means man-made system is not fully convinced itself that the knowledge they are disseminating through their training institutions or education institutions is not to be given to every child in the land. So there is a factor of discrimination over there. This education does not cater for the life of the hereafter. Hence, the self which develops does not acquire those attributes which help to set out a higher aim in life for it and draw out those latent potentials which are related to the permanent values. So if the hereafter doesn't come into it, that means it does not form part of our consciousness. And if it doesn't form part of our consciousness, how are we going to bring out those latent potentials which are related to the life of the hereafter? And that part of ourself will not develop. Due to the availability of social media platforms, the opportunities for acquiring information and turning it into knowledge have become widely available. This is also related to affordability and basic education and skills. And as we speak and share this presentation, there are millions and millions of children who do not have any opportunity to go to schools. And they are children like any other child in the world. So this is a gross injustice. And of course, knowledge is a relative value as far as those parts of the world are concerned. In order to understand the world created by the unbridled human intellect, we need knowledge of the Quran. And Quran says, Kitabun fussilat ayatuhu Quranan Arbiyan liqawmi ya'lamun. A book whereof the verses are explained in detail, a Quran in Arabic for people who have knowledge. And over here, I will say that Arabic over here, everyone knows that Quran is in Arabic. So Quran over here is using Arabic as an adjective that its root is given over here. It refers to making matter clear and elaborate, not making error in conversation. So Quran is a book which makes things perspicuously clear. Knowledge, the difference between religion and deen. The common belief under religion is that Iman is the name of accepting something without any thinking or questioning. It is assumed that religious matters cannot be comprehended through intellectual discourses, hence should be accepted without any need for evidence and reasoning. In the matters of Shariat, intellect has no role to play. This is the reason that the war between religion and intellect is continuing since ancient times. And the clashes between science and religion are part of this debate. And I personally experienced that as well, that in one of the congregation, some so-called scholars said that intellect has nothing to do in the understanding of the Quran. And this is something which is embedded in these kind of belief systems. And that is why wherever there is religion and it has a stronghold in that society remains backward, because their intellect does not reach that stage where they can see the world on a wider context and get maximum benefit from this life, particularly through sciences. Contrary to this, Deen has its proclamation based on knowledge and makes it accepted through reasoning and evidence. Under Deen, Iman is the name of accepting some truth based on evidence with the full conviction of the heart and mind. Note how every page of the Quran appeals to knowledge and intellect and invites towards comprehension and insight. It calls those who do not make use of intellect and reasoning as animals, rather more lost, because they have mind but they are not using it. Animals are programmed to behave in a certain way because they work through their instincts, whereas human beings are made free. And rather than we celebrate that by using our intellect and reasoning, we confine it to certain false belief systems. and declares them to be the denizens of hellfire. To look at a number of points of differences between religion and deen, the book Islam Challenge to Religion, towards the end in the last chapter, I think it is conclusion, where all these are listed beautifully by Allama Pervez. Some aspects of deen relate to the metaphysical side of life, but this does not mean these cannot be grasped through the use of knowledge and vision. There are two paths to acquire understanding of these realities, and both of these relate to intellectual knowledge. And I've taken it from the Bible Quran. Next is knowledge continuing. One approach is that after accepting some reality put forward by Wahi, that is the Quran, to keep pondering through thinking and reasoning based on observation and experiences until you reach an understanding. The second approach is that after freeing the mind from all preconceived beliefs, to reflect and reason on the realities of the universe, and in this way reach the intangible realities through physical science. In this approach, more time and effort is consumed. That is why under man-made systems, it will take centuries before man will realize that all the approaches he has used to live this life have been a failure. Whereas through the revelation, because it is a truth first day, it tells us the reality right the first day, we can take all the benefits within a very short time. In fact, we can establish the system in a fairly short, finite time of an average human being if the responsibility and people start working on it at a very young age. The claim of the Quran is that if you adopt the correct approach to knowledge and keep advancing in it with resolve, then you are bound to reach this truth based on evidence and vision which was put forward by Wahi. The reason is that Wahi sent down by that Allah who is the creator of nature and is omniscient. Because Allah wants us to succeed. Allah wants us to live a life which is free from fear and grief and then become eligible for the next stage of life, that is after death. So Quran helps us to become that which Allah intends us to become, and that is actually a path. There is no end defined for human being. Human beings have to keep evolving and keep expanding the vision and the breadth of their self so that they can participate in all the knowledge which Allah has created, and He wants us to share in that knowledge. Hence, Deen is the name of realities based on knowledge and vision, not a collection of guesswork or superstitions. And we have seen through these presentations that what Quran is putting forward can be proved right based on evidence, even through the working of the man-made system. Wherever there are failures in the man-made system, Quran has already pointed it out within its pages. Whatever has appeared in the Quran in relation to knowledge and intellect, reasoning and evidence, understanding and reflection is so vast that it is difficult to summarize under one topic. And we will cover this aspect in our second presentation. Knowledge, some definitions. So what I've done over here is I just carried out a search and saw and wanted to share some of the definitions which are noted in Google on knowledge. Knowledge is the understanding, awareness, or familiarity gained through experience, education, or learning. It encompasses facts, information, and skills acquired over time. Next is on the concept of knowledge. Knowledge is often defined as a belief that is true and justified. This definition has led to its measurement by methods that rely solely on the correctness of answers. So this is the way exams take place. A correct or incorrect answer is interpreted to mean simply that a person knows or does not know something. Next is the fact or condition of knowing something with familiarity gained through experience or association. And that is interesting one part, that through experience and association we also learn. And we do know how to gain knowledge through experience. Number two is acquaintance with or understanding of a science, art, technique. And that is by reading, by learning, by going through an institution, by doing experiments, we can learn that. The fact or condition of being aware of something. Next is three concepts of knowledge: work knowledge, the way one controls and manipulates one's environment. That is an interesting part, that how people manipulate. That is again an action is required there. And that means there has to be a knowledge for that. Practical knowledge, this is the human social interaction or communicative action. And third is emancipatory knowledge. This is self-knowledge or self-reflection. And nowadays people are talking about it a lot, and we can in fact search it through YouTube. Knowledge allows us to get things done, and very important. Where there is lack of knowledge, nothing will get done because they don't know how to do it. As the popular slogan has it, knowledge is power, and it does give us power. Next is, there are some quotes of interest from some famous people I came across, and I thought I'll share it with everyone. I love talking about nothing. It is the only thing I know anything about. It is by Oscar Wilde. Knowledge is only potential power. Not to know is bad. Not to wish to know is worse. And we see those kind of people as well. When we talk to them about the Quran, they don't want to even hear about it. Real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. And Confucius said it, very wise man. The art and science of asking questions is the source of all knowledge. The more extensive a man's knowledge of what has been done, the greater will be his power of knowing what to do. So we should know where the world is now and how to take it forward. And that is where Quran helps us. Quran tells us what this world is like, what human world will be like, and it also tells us what it should be like. There is a great difference between knowing and understanding. You can know a lot about something, not really understand it. And we come across a lot of these so-called scholars of the Quran who think they know, but they really don't understand the Quran because they never talk about the system. They never see the problems in the world. They look at it as an information, and probably with that deep down desire to get some swab out of it. Those that know, do. Those that understand, teach. Beware of false knowledge. It is more dangerous than ignorance. And this is terrible. If we all our life think that we have knowledge, and then all will fall flat, particularly related to the life of the hereafter. Ignorance hates knowledge. Information is not knowledge. Merely knowing something is not knowledge unless we convert it into knowledge and then convert it into an understanding which leads to certain actions and some decision making. Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. And last one is, knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and that is a fact. Next is converting information into knowledge. Information refers to raw data, facts, or details that are presented or received. Knowledge is the processed, organized, and interpreted form of information. Knowledge is built upon information. So if there is no information, there is no knowledge. So important is to get our facts right first. And that is why there is another interesting point over here is that if our knowledge today is, let's say, A, and we make certain decision based on that, and as our intellect will grow, as we will gain more information, maybe after a few weeks, it might become A+1. Then we will have to revise our decision. So this is the way human intellect functions. But in the case of the Quran, if Quran says this is A today, it will remain A till the end of time. Let us look at some examples from the Quran. In the case of the messenger Yusuf, وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ رَبُّكَ وَيُعَلِّمُكَ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ وَيُتِمُّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكَ. And this is something which is quoted being said by the messenger Yaqub, the one who was the father of the messenger Yusuf. Thus will your Rabb choose you and teach you the interpretation of events and perfect his favor to you. Then the verse ends with, Inna Rabbaka Alimun Hakim. Surely your Rabb is full of knowledge and is Hakim. If you remember, we covered it under Surah Yusuf in some detail. So over here, what he is saying is that Allah will teach you, that is, you will gain more knowledge, and then you will be able to interpret the events. And interpreting the events means to lead to decision making. And he has called it the blessing of Allah. So knowledge which we gain through the way of Allah is a blessing from him. It is a bounty from him. It is a free gift to us for the nourishment and development of our intellect. And over here, when Quran says, Inna Rabbaka Alimun Hakim, so we are expected to become Alim and Hakim. Questioning is part of acquiring knowledge. And in the next verse, Quran says, Laqad kana fi Yusufa wa ikhwatihi ayatun lis-sa'ilin. Verily, in Yusuf and his brothers are signs for those who question and seek the truth. Very interesting. If you remember that Messenger Yusuf was very badly treated by his brothers and he was almost killed. And Quran says that in these events, all those who are seeking the truth, they should look at it and expand their understanding that how the way of Allah functions in human life. And it is all directed towards the righteous people, the Mu'mineen. And that is the way the system functions. So if today Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen comes into existence and starts working towards the system of Deen, then that means everything will be directed towards them. In relation to the messenger Yusuf, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ أَتَيْنَهُ حُكْمًا وَإِلْمًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. When Yusuf attained adulthood, we gave him power and knowledge. So see here, the knowledge is the one which gives power, or they are interlinked with each other. They are intrinsically linked with each other. Thus do we reward those who are muhsineen, that is, those who wish to do those deeds which are balanced. They want to bring balance in the society. First, of course, they bring balance to themselves. And this is referred to over here. See the link here between knowledge, power, and doing balanced deeds. Let us go to the next slide, converting information to knowledge, continuing on that. The physical signs in the outer world need to be turned into knowledge. And Quran says, Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ardi waqtilafil layli wan nahari la ayatin li ulul albab. We should go through 2 or 3 verses after this verse from the Quran in our own time. In the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of night and day, which creates time, and we know it creates serial time. There are indeed signs for men of understanding. The conclusion they reach after the study of these signs is, Rabbana ma khalaqta haza batila. Our Rabb, not for batil have you created all this. See, again, this is understanding. The information is that we see day and night being formed through the rotation of the earth around the sun. But this is just the information. So convert it into knowledge is to come to this conclusion that all of this universe is created for human beings to practice their choice and intent. And this is for producing constructive results, not producing destructive results. And if the destructive results are being produced, we should question it and go through the Quran and find out the remedy for that. And time is another important point, because Quran has put a lot of emphasis on passing time, that we should be in this finite life, be aware of passing time. And then every day, every week, we should see how much we have utilized for our self-development and how much we have wasted on aimless conversations and meaningless gatherings and meaningless activities. The Quran is for those who wish to enhance their knowledge. And we have gone through this verse previously as well. Kitabun fussilat ayatuhu Quranan Arabiyyan liqawmi ya'lamun. And I'll go to the next point. The information given in the Quran needs to be turned into knowledge by us. Hence needs to be studied analytically to learn the system of Deen. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ وَيْلَكُمْ ثَوَابُ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لِمَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَلَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الصَّابِرُونَ. But those who had been granted knowledge said, Alas for you, the reward of Allah is for those who accept Iman and do solid deeds. But this none shall attain except those who steadfastly persevere. We can go through the Quran to see the context of this verse. I think it is in relation to Qarun, that he had accumulated a lot of wealth, and those who had Iman, they told him that your path is wrong. Linked to the above is, that is over here, what is mentioned is Amana wa amila salihan. And Quran says, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَا يَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Allah has promised to those who have Iman and do solid deeds that He will of a surety establish in the land as He granted it to those before them. So there are two information given in two verses, and we have to put it together to gain the knowledge of establishing power or getting power from Allah's laws in the land. And we have gone through this aspect previously as well. Life without the knowledge of the Quran. Without the guidance of the Quran, man draws wrong conclusions. For example, over here, there is a verse quoted from chapter 39, verse 49. فَإِذَا مَسَّ الْإِنسَانَ ضُرٌّ دَعَانَا ثُمَّ إِذَا خَوَّلْنَهُ نِعْمَةً مِنَّا قَالَ إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ بَلْ هِيَ فِتْنَةٌ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Now when trouble touches man, he cries to us. But when we bestow a favor upon him as from ourselves, he says, this has been given to me because of a certain knowledge I possess. And we come across people under the religious domain where all the successes of the man-made system, they relate it to Allah. And when you question them, say that that means Allah is unjust, that He is keeping some poor and some rich, then they don't have an answer. They look at you with a blank face. But it is wrong to think like that. The means of sustenance plus knowledge plus man's efforts produce results. Most people do not make efforts to understand because they do not acquire knowledge. They just live life from day-to-day basis, being the victims of the circumstances. That the way man-made system presents itself, they just be part of it and live without thinking much. And this is where Quran helps us to look into those corners, those hidden places where it says that look for that and find out the answers of the reality of your life. Human desires and emotions mislead man in his worldly life. إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. For he, that is Shaitan, that is human unbridled desires and emotions, commands you to what is evil and shameful, and that you should say of Allah that of which you have no knowledge. And of course, we will say everything about Allah which He is not. Allah is just. He has made all these laws and permanent values, and He does not do injustice to human beings. But all these people who follow the wrong path, they attribute, for example, the whole belief of Qismat is related to this, as if Allah has done injustice to them and created their Qismat, and it is preordained. There is nothing preordained. Human beings live by the consequences of their choices. People like to follow the ways of their forefathers, and that is another excuse. وَإِذَا فَعَلُوا فَاحِشَةً قَالُوا وَجَدْنَا عَلَيْهَا آبَاءَنَا وَاللَّهُ أَمَرَنَا بِهَا قُلْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَأْمُرُ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ أَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. When they do what is shameful, they say, we found our fathers doing so, and Allah commanded us thus. Say, nay, Allah never commands what is shameful. Do you say of Allah what you know not? There are numerous examples in the domain of sectarian Islam which are in practice against the instructions of the Quran. For example, the existence of sects is shirk, declared as a supreme crime by Allah. And this point has been shared before as well, that these sects simply cannot disappear without bringing Quran in our life. That is the pure Quran. Next slide is, what is the impact of not possessing knowledge of the Quran? Possessing knowledge of the man-made systems gets us through our physical life, and we reap its successes. And I put these successes under inverted commas because we all know these successes are related to material benefits in life and related to our own status, wealth, house, cars, family, and these kind of things hereafter, and the system of Deen doesn't come into it. But since it does not include the higher purpose of life, we therefore fail to even recognize the existence of that self within us to which the Quran draws our attention. However, we need knowledge of the man-made systems in order to capitalize on what is noted in the Quran. For example, the system of Deen evolves out of the man-made systems. hence the need to understand the sphere of thinking of the human intellect devoid of the guidance of Wahi. So in order to understand the Quran to its and getting the maximum out of it, we should know where the man-made system is at any point in time. Because the system of deen will come out of that man-made system which exists, for example, in 2025. Or the system of deen will come out of the system of 2030. So the word of 2030 we will have to understand. So this is the way it works. There's no point in going into the past all the time and looking at it that what happened back in, let's say, 7th century or 8th century. We should look at the circumstances as of today. And we should look at the Quran that way. And then we will see that all the things of this jigsaw puzzle fall in place. Then there is the world of sciences, which are essential for solving the issues of physical life on the planet and for exploring and expanding the domain of the means of sustenance made available on the earth. The scientific sphere helps to expand our vision and consciousness in order to fully appreciate the extent to which Allah has gone to make human life as convenient as possible, directly based on human efforts. And there's a time factor over here. If we want quick results, we should make an effort and get it done. We can see that the material development which is taking place, for example, in China, is taking place within a shortest possible time. Within 3 or 4 decades, China has changed the face of the earth and their own country. And this is possible because if human beings make an effort, they can bring changes very quickly. Another point we should note is that while we are training our children, we should expose them to all these points. No need to go into the history all the time and talk of the former glory of Islam. They have to be taught on the basis of what is happening in today's world. And we should relate all these verses to today's world based on evidence so that they find attraction in it. Because then they should understand that how they can solve these problems, firstly by changing their own psyche. Quranic knowledge helps us to complete the jigsaw of the purpose of life by bringing together physical and cognitive aspects of the aim of human creation, so that man lives a life free from fear and grief here and enters the next phase totally free from fear and uncertainty of the life of the hereafter. Next is knowledge about 2 different paths of life. Now what I've done over here is I've drawn a schematic just to make it more interesting and more illustrative. This is a mankind. There are far more people over here and they are living their life on the planet Earth. And this is the lens, world view through non-Quranic lens. So this is the way these people will look at the world, and we can see that happening in the world of 2025. Now over here, because their view is very narrow, very myopic, they can only see a very small part of their life, or their vision is very narrowed, very restricted, because they are only looking at the material side of it. They are not looking at the cognitive development of their own and the issue of self and the overall aim of life. And such life ends with death. Knowledge is gained in relation to material success in the world, and that is happening in today's world, and we can see plenty of it. And such a life after death will be just a straight line. This gap will disappear because this life is not physical the way we look at it. So at this stage, we do not know what kind of world that will be. But all the abilities of our physical life will not be applicable over there. For example, if somebody was doctor and he never developed himself in the light of the Quran, there will be no hospital over there. At least we know that there is no hospital. Quran hasn't pointed to that. And in any case, all these problems are very much physical. This is a physical world. So we should stretch our imagination beyond into the hereafter in the light of the Quran, and we will see that it is just a straight line. Because these people, when they land up over here, they do not hold qualification that develops self, which is of use in this life, according to the Quran. The undeveloped self will have no further evolution. It will remain static and will remain in the state in which it was just before the death of the body in this world. This inability to go further with consciousness, return to this self, will cause regret and disappointment. But they will retain that consciousness with which they left this world. And that is an important point, because Allah does not put people into Jannat or into Jahannam. People bring their own Jannat and Jahannam with them. And which is the biggest Jahannam is that they will not have that consciousness, that self, which is of any use in the life of the hereafter. And we can imagine it. Just give ourselves pause and reflect that in this life, if we are, for example, trapped, if somebody is put into a prison and cannot go out, let's say for 5 years, how desperate that state of mind will be for that human being. And over here, we are trapped by our own actions, by our own self-development, and we made bad decisions over here, and then we landed up in this mess. Now, over here, I've only taken a small segment of this, which means that these are the Mu'mineen who made a different decision. And they looked at the life worldview through Quranic lens, permanent values, including Iman and Salih deeds. And Salih deeds we know are extremely important. And over here, they have a wider vision than this vision. These people have a narrower vision because now they are looking at their life through the lens of the Quran, and they have also developing their own self, which is continuously expanding with the passage of time. And by coming together, of course, their hearts become united and they are benefiting. For example, on this platform, we are immensely benefiting from the knowledge of the Quran, and we are expanding it with the passing of time, and then we go back and practice it in our own life. And all our choices should be based on these permanent values. And the path of self is eternal and commences in the physical world. Time is measurable in the physical world. Time beyond death is eternal. And that is the beauty of it, that we do not have to worry that day is coming and day is going and I'm getting old and I'm getting nearer to death and there are a lot of work still to be done. Over there, then we are into a different domain of based on self's development. I, that is I inverted I, that is myself, me, will continue traversing further phases of evolution after leaving behind all that which falls under my and mine. We went through it in our previous presentation. And over here in the next hereafter, contrary to that, which is just a straight line, over here, these two gaps are increasing. And with the passage of time, because we are dealing with Alimun Hakim, and he's got plenty of knowledge waiting for us to be explored. And if we did not make an effort over here to expand the horizon of our knowledge, then I'm afraid our consciousness will not be expanding any further. So this is the advantage we have by following the Quran and by understanding the Quran and by coming together. Knowledge, let us look at a few verses for illustration. The Quran has drawn our attention to the mindset of unguided minds. And we remember we covered this surah previously. Alhaakumut takasur hatta zurtumul makabira kalla sawfa ta'lamuna summa kalla sawfa ta'lamun kalla la ta'lamuna ilmal yaqeen. The mutual competition for seeking abundance diverts you until you reach death. And this is what is happening in the man-made world, that people are pursuing these material benefits because that is the way man-made system is organized. That is the way people get attracted to that greed, that competition all the time. And then they die. And we can see, we can go to some funeral and ask the people that what was the life of this person who has now left this world forever. But nay, you shall soon know. And that is the beauty of it, that there is a knowledge available in the Quran. Again, you soon shall know. Nay, were you to know with certainty of mind, and you will know exactly through this knowledge with certainty that what did you earn and what you have left behind in the previous life. Using intellect in order to grow beyond the influence of our biological existence elevates us to the human level. And Quran says, Inna sharra dawabe indallahi summul bukmul lazina la yaqilun. And this is another very important point, that we know about our biological relationships in the world, and we have biological affinities as well towards children, friends, and other friends and relations. But Quran says to grow out of it. For the worst of beasts in the sight of Allah are the deaf and the dumb, those who do not use their intellect. Because once we start using our intellect and reasoning potentials within the Quran, then we realize the importance of biological relationships and the relationships of mu'mineen coming out of that and through unity of heart and then progressing towards the system of deen. It's a totally a different life. It's a higher level of existence, but at the same time does not mean that we can give up those biological relationships and the responsibilities for that. Those stay in their place, because in any case, under the system of deen, all biological responsibilities will be fulfilled adequately in the light of the Quran. In the absence of the Quranic guidance, we live life at the mercy of our unbridled intellect and emotions, and this kind of life may get us through the man-made systems and its vulnerabilities. But this life simply cannot include those aspects which are related to the system of deen and the life of the hereafter. This self finds itself trapped within the physical body and its needs and is unable to view the benefits of life beyond the physical existence. Next point is, this aspect is summed up in verse, وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَهْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانُ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. What is the life of this world but amusement and play? And we see plenty of this evidence around us. Nobody talks of hereafter and the higher purpose of life. But verily, the abode of the hereafter, that is life indeed. And this is a beautiful word or a term used by the Quran, hayawanu, and it is on the weightage of fulan, which means that this life, right here, once we come out of the biological life and get the feel of this new life through the Quran, it itself tells us that we have now come to a higher plane of existence, and the problems which we previously could not understand, now these become visible, and we also find the solutions for that. That is life indeed, if they but knew. And this includes the joining of hearts and coming together of mu'mineen as well, because that is a totally non-biological existence. All the biological relationships then become very, very diminished, very, very they have their own significance, but then one looks at them very objectively. Now with that, we come to the final slide of today's presentation, picture of the human world in a nutshell in 2025. This is the planet, blue planet, on which we are living and giving our presentation and sharing it from different parts of the world. The land which is available on this planet has been given free by Allah. Air is free. Agriculture, it is free except the efforts which we make to grow crops. And we have gone through this aspect previously. Mineral wealth of all kinds. And the beauty of this mineral wealth is that it is distributed throughout the planet. It is not in one continent that everything is included. It is distributed. Why it is distributed? So that human beings are forced, compelled to interact with each other, and they are meant to utilize those for the good of everyone, not accumulate it. And there are animals over there to make the life beautiful and of course to provide food. And then is water plus sunlight. Water is free, sunlight is free, and water is only not free where we have to make use of like desalination of seawater, or we have to make dams and others, and Quran says for that you are entitled to charge, but not the initial resource of water. And then beauty plus variety. Now this is something we may not pay much attention, that when we go somewhere, for example on a holiday, or go somewhere in the rural area and see the beauty of land, and we look at it and we say, oh, that looks very beautiful. Have we really stopped and thought for a moment that who gave us that trait of appreciating beauty, and then that free enjoyment we get through that beauty which Allah has created for us. And this thing should force us. This is that aesthetic side of human beings, and aesthetics is also permanent value. And once we come to that, I will expand it to see that what all is covered over there, and then we'll realize that how much blessings and bounties Allah has spread across this planet, and which we are not appreciating just because there is no system of deen. And over here, I've said I has intellect, desires, emotions, choice plus intent, and the book. And without the book, the world we are living in is not making use of its own potentials of I. There's so much in this I which is remaining unexplored. Man created world of 2025 without the book. Science plus technology based on human intellect. We can see the benefits of that. And of course, these are selective as well. Imbalance plus chaos, conflicts due to absence of the guidance. The choice provided by the Quran not being availed for whatever reasons, humanity suffering due to absence of the knowledge of self-development. Because if the selves are not developed, then we cannot create a new world. The physical needs of some are met while the majority suffers. The needs of the self are not addressed. Knowledge of the choice offered by the Quran to the human intellect. So we have to take a different choice which the Quran provides us. If dissatisfied with the man-made world, we can create a better world. So choice is ours. And on this platform, of course, we are working in that direction. Fulfill the purpose of human creation, create a new world by first creating new life. That is, we create a new life within our own self, which becomes enabled to conceive a new life in the outer world. The blueprint is outlined in the Quran. Connect your world with the hereafter. So the present world of 2025 is not connected with the hereafter of the Quran, but we wish to create that world which will be connected to the life of the hereafter. And then it will proceed further. It will not come to an end. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.